And we're rolling. Hi everyone, this is Violet. It's nice to finally be able to talk to everybody like this via video and such. I'm sorry it took me a while. I've been kind of caught up with things the past couple weeks or so, with my brother being in and a bunch of other stuff like that. So I guess let's go ahead and just do this. Just as a warning in advance, if you're watching this, this will probably take a while, so get comfy, get a drink, do whatever. I mean, I've got a drink right here with me. It's my cherry lemon limeade that I'm drinking out of a mason jar. And yes, it is a jar, and I'm not ashamed, because mason jars are awesome. Anyway, okay. I was glad to see when I got this list of questions that there wasn't anything incredibly awkward or anything like that, so thanks for sparing me. There were a couple that were a bit nebulous to me that I'll address to when I get there, so just bear with me on those. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, question number 1. What would you most like to be famous for doing? I'm not sure if I would really want to be famous for anything, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not that I wouldn't want to be recognized for things that I do or anything. I don't know, I'm not a person who seeks attention. I mentioned on a certain place in the forum that I'm a shy person, I'm a bit of an introvert, and doing something in the public eye would, you know, kind of be a little bit out of my comfort zone, so I probably wouldn't want to be famous for anything. But if I had to pick, I would want it to be for something relevant, like, I don't know, just as an example, easing world hunger, or finding a way to restore world peace, or something like that. It wouldn't be anything like Kim Kardashian would do or something. No offense to people who like the Kardashians. If that's what you want to watch and who you want to deal with or whatever, that's your business, but it's just not for me. I don't get it. But yeah, probably wouldn't be famous for much anything if I had my way. Alright. Question 2. What is the most realistic dream you have ever had? I was a bit confused by this one. At first I was thinking maybe you meant, what would be the most realistic dream that I would have that would be most likely to happen in real life? But I'm thinking that's maybe not what you meant. I'm thinking maybe you meant more like, the dream that you had that was most realistic to you in terms of, like, actually seeming real at the time that you dreamt it. If that's not, what you mean, then I'm sorry. In that case, it would probably be a dream that I had once when somebody very dear to me, whose name I shall not mention, was killed in a tragic accident, and in the dream he had his funeral and everything, and it was so vivid to me that I ended up waking up in the middle of the night, like, legitimately crying. It was kind of scary. And that's really sad that that's my answer. It makes me seem slightly depressed and morbid and whatever. I don't know, I almost kind of wish you would have maybe asked about bizarre dreams that I've had, because those are the ones I really tend to remember anyway in terms of, like, dreams and such, and those are the ones that are really fun to read about and fun to share with people. Like, the most recent example I had of this, which I won't go into full detail about just because it is highly embarrassing, but it involved me, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and his office, which for some weird reason in the dream was, like, completely blue, and it had a blue couch with, like, Venetian blinds on the windows. But I won't go into it any more than that, because, yeah, it's bad. Okay. Question 3. What is the scariest thing that's ever happened to you? Okay, I should start before I go into the story that pretty much all my life I've had an aversion to snakes. I don't like them. I don't want them around me. I don't care whether you're poisonous or not. I don't care if they're like regulated by like herpetologists and like kept in the cage. I just get them away from me. Just not interested. Anyway, about the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I was with my mom, and she was taking me to a friend's house, and we had just gotten off the main road which leads to our house when I felt something on my foot, and I looked down. There's a snake there! And I'm wearing flip-flops at this point, so it's basically a snake on my bare feet. I start flipping out, and my mom's looking at me all strange. I was like, what's wrong with you? And then she looks down, immediately veers over under the side of the road, just like, get out of the car, get out of the car. And she's just like, we're all like, car. And then like all the neighbors are looking at us and like, what on earth is going on over here? And we had to get my dad on the phone and get him to come in from whatever call he was doing and get to the snake. And it was during the point when they were trying to lure the snake out of the car that they saw it and realized that it was a copperhead snake. For those of you who don't know what copperheads are, they're quite common around my area where I live, and they're also poisonous. So, yeah. Poisonous snake all over my feet. And I don't like snakes, but it was a poisonous one. And if it had bit me, I would have been very, 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 very ill. In fact, after that, I refused to sit in the front seat for a month because I was afraid another snake would come up and kind of get me. So, I mean, I had an aversion to snakes to begin with, but that kind of solidified it, and like, I hate them even more now. So yeah. I hear there are no snakes in Ireland, so maybe that's where I need to go if I want to avoid this problem. Or maybe like, I don't know. That sounds like a good idea. I hear Ireland's really pretty anyway. And it seems like it too, just from the pictures that I've seen. Props to you Irish people out there who are watching. Alright. Give me a second. I'm gonna have this beverage now. So good. Alright. Question 4. How old would you be if you didn't know how old you are? Okay, for a reference point, I am 23. Thinking about it, and knowing how I am, I would probably think I'm around the same age range that I am now. And I'm not saying that just because, like, I know how old I am. I mean, this question is kind of hard whenever you think about it that way, because it's like, well, I mean, you already know how old you are, so what's the point of trying to guess how old you thought you were if you didn't know? But, I mean, I would take into consideration, like, different aspects of how I know my mind works. I know that I have a certain understanding of the world that a younger person would have, so I would know that I wasn't, like, a teenager and stuff like that, so I could gauge that way. At the same time, however, I do have this sense of youth and play and sometimes immaturity that would lead me to believe that I wasn't above 30. So I figure if I had to give a range, it would be between the ages of 21 and 28, maybe? In that age range, I don't think I could pick an exact number. Like, that's asking a whole lot of somebody, but I would probably be around the same age, maybe, if I really thought about it, maybe a bit older, like maybe 25, I don't know. That's as best as I can answer that. Ugh, sorry, like, my nose is all itchy, and I don't know why. Okay, I have to, Jesus Christ. Sorry, okay. Question 5. Would you rather lose all of your old memories or never be able to make new ones? This is one of those, like, Sophie's Choice questions, because both options are really bad. It's like lose-lose. And I can see why both of them are awful. It's like, if you lost all of your old memories, you couldn't look back on all the good things that happened to you up to a certain point. While at the same time, if you couldn't make new memories, that would mean that you wouldn't remember anything for the rest of your life. So, how I decided to think of this, rather, basically what you're asking me is whether I would have amnesia or Alzheimer's, and both of those things have their own problems. Having put it into that perspective, though, it makes it slightly easier to answer, and I suppose I would rather lose the old memories, because, with amnesia, it's at times temporary, and it can kind of be fixed, whereas with Alzheimer's, there's no fix in that, which is really a shame, and there are people working on it, and there are medicines and things to help regulate symptoms of it, but once you have Alzheimer's, you're pretty much screwed. Excuse me, my nose is still itchy. But yeah, I'd probably lose the old memories, and I probably would pick that anyway, even if I didn't take the question in the way that I did, because as I mentioned, I'm 23, and I would hope to live at least another 23 years, so I feel like it would be less of a loss if I lost the old memories, because although there would be 23 plus years of memories that I would lose, there would be other stuff that I would be able to gain, and hopefully that would maybe make up for it. Okay. Question 6. Are you where you saw yourself 5 years ago, and where do you see yourself 5 years from now? Yes and no, and I'm going to tell you why. There are things that I feel like I've accomplished that I meant to accomplish. It is around this time 5 years ago when I started college, and my goal for that was to graduate in 4 years, or 8 semesters worth of work for my bachelor's degree, and you know what? I did that. I graduated in May of 2012 with my bachelor's in music. Yay! On the other hand, there are things that haven't gone quite as expected, that I didn't really think would happen, but did, and it's both good and bad in terms of that. So, for example, I never thought that I would actually join a college fraternity, and I did. I'm now an alumni member. Woo! Just things on and off like that I really, I did do, and then other things that I haven't done or didn't expect to do, just kind of random things like that. As to where I see myself 5 years from now, that's always really hard to answer, just because, I think people know what they want to do, but whether people do it or not is kind of, sketchy, and it there's so many variables that you have to think about in terms of the question. To be honest, I'm not really sure if I'm that bothered by it either way. I'm kind of one of those people that just wants to live life and enjoy it. So I guess that would be how I would want to view myself 5 years from now, is just be able, whatever it is I'm doing, to just enjoy and be perfectly content with what I'm doing, no matter what it is. That's my answer. Sorry if that's too vague for you, but that's just the best I know how to answer it in my own way. Alright, question 7. Why did the chicken cross the road? Which one of you jokesters asked me this? No offense, I'm just playing. The answer to this question would depend on whether you wanted a silly response that I'm making up, or a response that I would have based on real life observances within my life. If you wanted a silly response, I would tell you that the chicken was crossing the road because it was running away from me because I was wanting to have it for dinner. Which would probably be somewhat true in some cases because I actually like chicken quite a lot. It's one of my preferred proteins. And in fact, I had some chicken just yesterday, which was actually really good. Yeah, Popeyes. However, on the same token, if you wanted an answer based on my real life observances of what happens in my neighborhood, then I would tell you that the chickens were crossing the road because dogs were chasing them and they were just trying to run away. Yes, I do have neighbors who have chickens. That's what you get when you live in Texas and outside of city limits. So, I mean, it's just how it is. It's not even like a whole lot of chickens though. It's just like a couple here and there. But there are chickens. Alright. Whew. Hold on, I gotta give myself more of this delicious concoction. Whew. That's a lot better. Alright, question 8. If you were to die tomorrow, excuse me, if you were to die tomorrow and have a chance to do one thing that you always wanted, would you say you were happy with how you lived, and what would be the one thing you would do? I think there are some things that I could have done maybe better, mostly in terms of interaction with others. That's always been kind of a weak spot of mine, to be perfectly honest with you, but I think there are a lot of things that I've done or that I've said or people that I've been around with that generally, I mean, I think it has been kind of alright. I mean, I could think of a lot worse that could have taken place, right? So I guess it depends on how we look at it. I would say probably, given how young I am and given the amount of experiences that I've gained throughout those years, that I feel like probably I lived my life in the best way that I knew how, really. So, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I could have got out more, but I'm not too bothered by that anyway, because I'm a bit of a homebody, so whatever. As to the one thing I'd like to do before I die, this is gonna sound really sad, but I've never been to a rock concert before, so I think that that would be the one big thing that I would love to do before I died. In fact, it would be even better if it were a music festival so I could see multiple bands. Like maybe go to ACL or Bonnaroo, or even better yet, to be able to get two things off at one stone, go to a thing like Glastonbury or Reading and Leeds, and so I could go to out of country and then see bands. So actually I could do like two things at once, because I've always wanted to go to England. I really have. I'm a bit of an Anglophile like that. A lot of my favorite groups are there. A lot of favorite actors are there. And the men are nice in Britain. So yeah, make it happen. Alright. Question number 9. What album is most important or significant to you? Alright, I'm just going to tell you guys beforehand that this question is kind of going to get a little bit personal, so if I kind of halt a lot and stuff like that, then that's why I'm like trying to just think of how I'm going to say what I'm going to say. I don't know how many people watching this know this, but I imagine a lot of you know. I'm a massive Muse fan. I have been for a little over 6 years now, and I still am, even though the second one came out and there were a couple things on there and I was just kind of like, so disappointed. But I know it probably seems to some people that I might talk about them a bit much, but I'm going to address them now because their album Black Holes and Revelations is probably the most important album to me ever. And there are several reasons for that. I first came across Muse, in this album rather, in my local Walmart. I bought the album on a complete whim, just because, I don't know, I felt drawn to it for some reason. I'm not really quite sure. But I was buying this for my birthday. I was turning 17, so that's sort of something that I kind of think is neat, that I found this band on my birthday and I grew to love them as much as I do. And I know that sounds really kind of silly and stupid, but that's how I feel about it. So I got into this album a whole lot, and at the time, especially, I had never heard anything like it before. I mean, and I know that sounds weird because they're not, if you compare them to some other acts or something, you would think, well, actually compared to some people, they actually sound quite conventional. But if you knew how limited my exposure to modern music was at the time when I came across this, then it would be easier to understand. And I'm actually going to address that issue a little bit more in a further question, because I feel like it applies more there. But I had never heard anything like it before, and I was just blown away by it, by how many different influences there were, and Matt's voice was unlike any other voice I had heard before, especially if you do take into consideration that I discovered Muse before I had even ever heard of Radiohead and stuff like that, just because a lot of people like to make that sort of comparison and stuff like that. And they also came to me at a time, well, actually, let me word it this way. That album and that band came to me at the exact right place at the exact right time in my life. Throughout the whole school year before, because this is my junior year of high school, I was dealing with a lot of different personal issues, and I still count that to this day, my junior year of high school, being the worst year of my life, for various reasons, having problems with school and at home, and this guy that I had liked, and then he shoved me off, and just even stuff within myself that I was kind of struggling to deal with. It was all sort of there, and not long before I bought this album, I kind of had almost had a mental breakdown or something like that. I wouldn't say it was quite a breakdown, but it kind of all came to a head and stuff like that. So at the time when I had gotten this, I was still sort of in a dark place, and I was a really angry sort of person, and listening to the words and the music in itself, it helped me get over that. There were things that Matt Bellamy was singing that I felt like he was singing directly to me, and it was something I needed to hear. I mean, sorry, I'm just kind of trying not to get all emotional here. And just even I don't know, even the band, I was because of this album I got into the band more, and I bought all their other albums that were out at the time, and as I was learning to learn more about them, they were doing things that I noticed about the band that sort of helped me grow, the idea how Matt Bellamy just says what he wants when he wants, and he doesn't really care what anybody else thinks. I mean, I sort of learned that sort of lesson from Matt, is to not take so much credence on what other people say. And I know it's kind of silly that it took a band to teach me that, but I mean, sometimes that's just what you need. It is what it is. So, just everything comes back to Black Holes and Revelations, like my involvement with the band and my evolution as a person, and really even my evolution in music taste, because honestly I think if it weren't for that band and in that album, and if it weren't for the fact that I had heard those sorts of things, I wouldn't have started listening to nearly the sorts of bands I listen to now, and I would have not expanded nearly as much. And I really have learned a lot about music in the past time, I don't know what that means, the past 6+ years. So, Black Holes and Revelations. Take that as you will. Alright. Question 10. What subjects, school or college subject-wise, interest you most? Just a moment. I'm actually a person that likes learning in general. I mean, as a kid, I would just soak up information, and I'm still like that now, especially, I think, maybe even more so, just with the, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words, with the invention of the internet and being able to have anything that you want to know about at the access of your fingertips. I can go to Wikipedia or some other website and just type in what I want to know, and it'll tell me. Like, I can do whatever I want. But you asked me specifically what interests me more than anything else. Well, I have a degree in music, so obviously music means a lot to me. I know that's not probably along the lines of what you're asking, because you're probably asking more about core subjects, but I feel like I have to address this first just because of my personal connection with it. I mean, I don't know, I feel like music helped me a lot, even just being involved with a group of people and being able to create something that made other people happy. That sort of sentiment, like, brightens my day. But anyway, you have the broad umbrella of music, and then there are other little things that you have under that I sort of got into while I was pursuing my degree. Music theory was something that I've always really enjoyed, partly because I understood it quite well. There's always something very easy for me to grasp, but other than that, it's just also the concept of being able to see how music works from like a technical perspective, which is kind of awesome to me. Now, under the other portion of music, something else that I got really interested in is music history. And it's really interesting because before I got into music history, I thought like general history, like, I don't know, Texas history or US history or world history even. Like, I found that sorts of stuff boring. Like, it would bore me to tears. I would get to my AP US history class in my junior year, for example, and like fall asleep in class. Not joking. And generally I wasn't that sorry about it because, I mean, that class was boring anyway, even if it was history. Like, I don't even want to get into that. But with music history, it kind of opened my eyes on the subject of history a little bit, because you would learn in music history that there were certain pieces and certain sorts of things that were going on with the evolution of composers and such that completely aligned with what was going on like culturally and things like that in terms of history. So seeing how history affected music during certain times was actually highly interesting to me, and so because of that, I don't quite view history in the same way anymore. I mean, I'm not a massive fan of history still. Like, I'm not going to sit there and read a book about World War II or something. I can't do that, but at the same time, I realize the relevance of history now, and I don't knock it like I used to. As far as academic subjects, I've always been a sort of more abstract person, and I deal very well in English. In fact, in my school district, I was labeled as gifted and talented, or GT for short, in that subject. So, like, reading and writing and those sorts of things, just to ball into English and stuff, those are the sorts of things I always thrived in, and like, have always interested me, really. I still read a lot now, and I do write every now and again. In fact, I did at one point try to come up with a novel of sorts, but that's kind of stalled. I did tell myself before I got into music that that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to, be a writer. So, who knows? But yeah, those sorts of things, like literature and just even grammar, like looking at how a language works. And I say a language because I'm actually like interested in other languages too, other than English, which is my native language. I took Spanish all 4 years of high school, and before I found out that I actually didn't have to have a minor in college, I was planning on minoring in Spanish. So, and I actually want to be able to get into languages more again like I used to. I want to be able to brush up on my Spanish and learn some other languages too. For some reason, I'm on a huge German kick right now, so all you German people out there, help a sister out, right? So it would be more of the abstract stuff that I get more, like music and English and such. I'm not going to say I don't like science or math, but it takes a bit more work for me to fully understand, especially math. Like, I took calculus my senior year of high school, and I'm pretty sure if it weren't for the fact that my best friend was in that class with me and he was trying to help me so much, I feel like I would probably have failed it. Which I didn't. I think I made a B. So, yay me. So yeah, there we go. Let's see how much time this is taking. Ooh, over half hour already. I'm sorry I'm taking so long. I get rambly sometimes. Okay. Excuse me. Question 11. If you had to change your name, what would you change it to? I've always liked the name Jade for some reason. I'm not quite sure why that is. I think maybe it's because it sounds more like me personally than Violet does. I don't know, it sounds more edgy and tomboyish than perhaps Violet does, because, I mean, Violet is a flower which is very dainty and fragile, which is not me at all. It's funny though, because I was telling this sort of thing to a friend of mine once about how I felt like my name didn't really fit me at all, and she was like, well, I actually think your name fits you perfectly. And I look at her and I was like, well, why? And she explained to me that my name was actually quite different, which did actually fit me quite well. So I hadn't thought of it that way before, and I was telling her, like, you know what? That actually sort of makes sense. So, honestly, if I had the option to keep my name, I probably would. Not because I necessarily like it, but because it does embody who I am as a human being. But if I had to change it, I would change it to Jade, just because I like how it sounds. Oh. Question 12. Which book do you most wish hadn't been adapted into a film? Okay, this was really easy for me. This is like the first question I think I was really able to easily answer. My answer to this question is A Series of Unfortunate Events. And I'll go a bit into why. For those of you who don't know what A Series of Unfortunate Events is, it is actually a series of books, a series of 13, and it covers the tale of the 3 Baudelaire children. Just to kind of give you a synopsis of what happens at the very beginning, because I'm not going to go through all 13, because that's crazy. Their parents die in a tragic fire, which also burns down their house. Ooh, excuse me. So, the 3 children are sent to a distant cousin of theirs named Count Olaf, who is actually a quite villainous person, and his main goal is to get the fortune of the Baudelaire children. And so throughout the entire series, he's kind of scheming to do that. And the children do their best to escape and try to get it away from him. So these books are actually personal to me. I was about in the 7th or 8th grade when I started reading these, and I was around the age that actually the eldest Baudelaire child was in the books, and her name also happened to be Violet, which I thought was cool in the first place, but as I got into reading them, I actually was like really drawn to them. I mean, the books themselves sort of exercise this black and absurdist sort of humor within them, which I've always been sort of drawn to that sort of thing anyway, and I know that sounds really morbid, but I guess that's just how my mind works. But it kind of helped me grow as a human being, and they help remind me that there are things that could always be worse. So, about this movie, I'm going to tell you why this should have never happened. First of all, they cast Jim Carrey, of all people, as Count Olaf, which I thought was a bad choice. And the way they did the character was completely wrong. And I know I said that the books exercise some sort of absurdist humor, but it's not supposed to be ha 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 funny humor. It's not supposed to be screwball in any sort of way, which is how I felt like it was done, and I feel like that's why they cast Jim Carrey. And I'm not a massive Jim Carrey fan anyway, but he totally messed up that role, and I was just not happy with that. Other characters, like the youngest Baudelaire child, Sunny, was done completely wrong as well. Throughout the books, this happens less as she gets older, but especially at the beginning, she's in infant/toddler stage, so in the books she'll say something, and then the narrator will put in subtitles for her explaining to the reader what she's saying. And they do that in the movie too, but the problem with that was they made her say things that she really wouldn't have said. They made her much more snide in the movie than she would have ever been in the books. Just sort of rude, and I'm just like, what are you doing to her? Other than the characters, I mean, there was some other stuff that I did completely wrong. Like, they put some of the events completely out of order. The movie is supposed to cover the first 3 books, and so what they did, they ended up taking, like, part of the first book, and then they did the second book, then the third book, and then they put the end of book 1 behind book 3, which I thought was really strange, and like, why would you do that? And actually I thought what they did with book 2, like, that was like a minimal section of that. They did kind of do a cool thing, though, by casting Billy Connolly as Uncle Monty, which wasn't necessarily the right choice physically either, because he didn't look like Uncle Monty at all, like he would have in the book, so that was weird in itself. But so there was that, and then there was the whole concept of inserting things from, like, future books that shouldn't have been in the first 3. Like, for example, there's, like, references throughout the movie of The Littlest Elf, and that's actually at the beginning. It starts with, like, a montage of The Littlest Elf, and that's not made a reference to until book 7, which I thought was really strange for you to do that for book 7 whenever it's supposed to be the first 3. And then there was, like, this whole thing in some point in the movie where the children are trapped in a car on some railroad tracks, and they used Littlest Elf bobblehead, and I'm like, that wasn't in any of the books at all. Like, where are you even getting this from? I mean, I could go on all day about how I dislike this movie so much. I mean, I rented it from the store, and I was glad that I rented it instead of actually going to a theater to see that, because that was just ridiculous, in my opinion. The one thing that I did sort of remotely enjoy was the fact that they had Jude Law playing the role of Lemony Snicket. And while I couldn't see Jude Law because Lemony Snicket's not supposed to be seen, it was actually at least sort of nice hearing his voice. See, that part they actually did right. A lot of the other stuff they just screwed over and decided to ignore. Sorry, this makes me sound so much like a book purist, but, like, I think there's a difference between thinking, like, that the book should be, and the book and the movie should be exactly the same, which that's not what I'm thinking at all. I mean, I'm saying that, like, this movie is not like the books at all, and I'm just, ugh, gross. That's how I feel about that. Alright. Question 13. What do you do to prevent unhappiness? I'm really sorry, but I'm not really sure what you mean by the question. I mean, like, are you talking about preventing unhappiness for me, or for other people, or society as a whole? Like, and it also seems weird because, like, I'm not sure if unhappiness is something you can necessarily prevent. I mean, unhappiness is sort of like one of those reflexive emotions, and that just kind of arises. I mean, different things make different people sad. I mean, there are some people, like, actually, like, for example, like, my mom will see a movie. Let's say it's, like, a dog movie or something, a movie involving dog, and, like, she'll get to the end of it and she's, like, crying because she was sad about what happened. I could watch that same movie and not react to it at all, just because that's how my mind works. I'm like, well, I mean, that's just how life is. Like, I don't know. I mean, that's a hard question, because, I mean, I don't know, maybe if you could elaborate for me what exactly you meant, or something along those lines, I could better answer it for you. But until then, I feel like I would be pulling an answer out of my butt, and I don't want to do that, because that is really, like, awful. You don't deserve to have just a random answer to your question. I want to be able to answer it in the best way. I don't know how, but just how it is. Perhaps I'm thinking way too hard on this. That does happen every now and again because I'm just like an analytical person and just can't quite make like mental connections. But if you could clear it up for me, I'll be more than happy to answer it for you later. I'm sorry. Okay. Question 14. What would your autobiography be called? This person also asked that I should have a subtext for the book too, so I'm having to think of both things. First of all, I wouldn't presume that my life were relevant enough to even put into a book, like, especially if it were to be written by myself. Like, I wouldn't see the point in it, especially with where I am in my life and things that I have or haven't done. Like, I feel like I don't have near enough life experiences to actually put something in a book. I also feel like it would probably be more of a memoir sort of book than an actual autobiography. Like, I'd probably cover something specific, but that's not what you asked me. Based on what I do know of my life so far, I guess I would pick something sort of simple for the title. Be like, Being Violet. Like, just something generic, not something that would seem too self-indulgent, which, I mean, that's kind of somewhat how I feel about autobiographies anyway. I'm just like, well, you really feel that highly of yourself to write a book about yourself? Like I said, memoirs are, I feel like, is slightly different, because I feel like with memoirs you kind of like talk about specific things maybe. But you asked about a subtext too. I guess with what I know of my life, it would be something along the lines of a girl's journey towards self-respect, because that's something that I really had to sort of do throughout my life, like learn how to love myself. And it's still ongoing, to be perfectly honest with you. So if I were to write this book, I would probably have to wait a while until like I actually fully accomplished the goal before I went and wrote it. So don't expect a book from me too soon. Alright, last question. Woohoo! Imagine all you other people out there are cheering too, because you're like, oh my gosh, Violet, why are you taking so long? Oh, that's good. Alright, last question. How much have your parents / upbringing affected your outlook of the world? And are you more conservative or liberal? I would say that it has affected me quite a bit, even more than I'm probably aware of. Just to give you guys a background of my life, I was born and raised in a town in East Texas. I still live here now. And if you know anything about the reputation of Texas, generally speaking, we're a Christian state. So that's the sort of surroundings that I was brought up in. I was brought up in a conservative Christian household. I feel like I was pretty sheltered compared to a lot of people, particularly within my age group. There were a lot of things that I wasn't allowed to do that other kids were. Like what I watched on TV and sorts of music I listened to, stuff like that. Like Nickelodeon, for example, like that channel was like banned from my house. Like it was deemed trash. So I didn't actually come across things like Rocko's Modern Life or SpongeBob until later. Um, and with, like, music, like, I sort of addressed this a little bit in the album question, but I was only allowed to listen to certain things. Like, with a lot of the stuff that I listen to now, I would not have been allowed to listen to 10 years ago. Like, absolutely not. In fact, I had an issue with my mom about 5 years ago, maybe. Cause I make like lists for her nowadays, like for Christmas and stuff like that, because that's what she wants, and she's like, this will help me give an idea of what you actually want. So I had asked for the Absolution Tour DVD for my birthday, and my mom came to me later and told me that she refused to buy it, and I asked her why. And she told me that she had seen that there was a song that had the word atheist in it. Now, this might not have been so much of a problem if it weren't for the fact that I had already told her by this point that I was an atheist. So, I mean, I was kind of looking at her like, so you have a problem with this because it addresses how I am, or what is your deal? And I even tried explaining to her with the song that it's not about, like, lack of faith at all. In fact, it's quite the other way around, and it's about a non-believer trying to reach God before they died. She didn't care. She was just like, nope, that has that word in it. I refuse to buy anything with that word in it. Never mind what the song actually is. So, it's whatever. So, there were lots of sort of things like that where we weren't allowed to do. I say we because I have 2 younger brothers, so it applied to all of us, that we weren't allowed to watch or see or say. I mean, I actually, when I was a kid, I had my mouth washed out with soap for saying shut up. Yep, that's the sort of life I had. And I realized as I got older that some of this was quite outrageous. And I grew to realize that there were a lot of philosophies that they had that I did not agree with. For example, as I mentioned, I'm an atheist, and my family is not. So that makes things sort of difficult. It's fine though, I can deal with it. I mean, because, they're my family, and I still love them, and they still love me, which is fine. Anyway, to answer the question of being more conservative or liberal, I would definitely say that I'm more liberal than the rest of them. On that same token, I would not say that I am specifically a liberal. If I'm anything, like, politically speaking, I'm a centrist, which basically means that I kind of make whatever decision I want on whatever topic based on how I feel about things. Like, I may hold a more liberal view on one thing and maybe a more conservative view on another thing. So it's not like I can actually fit into, like, conservative or liberal or Democrat or Republican. In fact, in the last election, I didn't vote for either Democrat or Republican. I voted third party. And I know that sounds like it's a bit of a cop-out, but I honestly saw, like, the debates and everything, and I didn't feel comfortable voting for either of the 2 people that were running. So I voted Gary Johnson. Woohoo! Not that anybody knows who that is. So there you have it. There is the interview in full. I really enjoyed doing this. I hope you enjoyed watching this. If not, I'm sorry. I can't wait when we get to doing the whole second go at this, because hopefully by that point I'll be able to be a bit more comfortable since I've done this before, and I feel like maybe I'll know you guys a bit more and stuff like that, so I'll be looking forward to that. Thanks for letting me do this, and I hope you guys have a fabulous rest of the week. Bye.